Then from like the first scene, it becomes clear that it's actually about coping with disability. So I was like, oh, wow, that's intense. And I was like, oh my God, no. According to the comedic setup from the last movie, Dory's short-term memory loss is so bad, it's like cripplingly horrible. If we're going to look at it as like a serious disorder and not a comedy device, that's going to be pretty dark. Like, how are they going to resolve that in a way that's satisfying? The answer is that they don't. So the whole movie, the present day action is set against...
Welcome to Cordkillers, our mission to report the intel from the front lines of the cord-cutting revolution so you, my friends, have the information you need to be able to watch what you want, when you want, where you want, on whatever device you want. I'm Tom Merritt.
Hey, I'm Brian Brushwood, and you just heard the lovely voice of Jenny.
Oh, crap. See, I didn't want to be spoiled on the split, so I took my earpiece out. Brian, sorry. What were you saying?
I was saying that you just heard the voice of Jenny Nicholson offering commentary on Finding Dory. That dropped just a couple of days ago. She did a little thing about some weird thoughts about Finding Dory. Man, her channel is fantastic. She's super
Wait, it was just Finding Dory?
Yeah.
Oh, so I didn't need to do that at all.
We really tried to tell you that like a million times.
Oh man, but it says Split Finding Dory analysis in her title, Brian.
The video was titled Split and Finding Dory because she did one segment on Split and another segment on Finding Dory.
I thought she was comparing the two.
No, she was not. But then what's funny is like you're so Split spoiler adverse that I tried to explain that to you.
I'm going full Kanata on this, and I'm not even joking, Brian.
Well, you're right to do it. You're going to have a delightful time when you do get around to see it. But in the meantime, everybody should listen to her thoughts on Rogue One. She's really, really sharp. She understands character motivation. She's really fun and interesting, and I've enjoyed everything I've seen her do. Jenny E. Nicholson is her YouTube channel. Good film analysis.
Very cool. No, good to know. I will now listen safely to that.
Trey Warren in the chat says, I don't know if you guys are doing a bit, but I literally did the same thing. He muted, he saw the word split and muted it. And good for all you guys, but don't worry about it.
Good thing for Ms. Nicholson to know if she gets fewer views on that. That could be one. Hey, let's get right to our primary target. So Apple has hired Timothy D. Twerdahl. Now, I don't need to tell you who Timothy Twerdahl is, but for a few others in the audience that may not know.
Good old T-Dog.
Twerdog.
Twirtle.
Timothy D. Twerdahl is the former head of Amazon's Fire TV division, and as vice president in charge of Apple TV product marketing. Sounds like Apple's getting a little serious about marketing the Apple TV. Before he worked at Amazon's Fire TV, he worked at Netflix and Roku. So he has been around the cord-cutting universe for quite a while now. Pete Distad will now move from the product marketing role into focusing on Apple's negotiations with media companies. And Distad is a former Hulu employee. He left Hulu in 2013 to join Apple. So, Brian, it sounds like Apple is getting serious, not just about marketing the Apple TV, but also about striking those deals.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is the moment at which it no longer gets to pretend in any capacity that Apple TV is just a hobby, right? When you hire the guy that was the former head of Fire TV, which trust me, if you bought anything from Amazon in the last 3 years, the box itself comes as an advertisement for Fire TV. I mean, hopefully he'll steer him in the right direction, but at the very least, this is a dog whistle indicating that this is somebody who knows the space and maybe is hopefully a commitment that Apple is no longer holding on to a vision of the perfect and instead is accepting and embracing the good.
And I have to say, as skeptical as I have been about that stupid TV app on the Apple TV, I have found myself using it.
Yeah?
And this is the sign of something interesting. Despite me not wanting to use it, right? Despite me saying, I don't get why I would ever use that. What happens is we'll turn on the Apple TV and up there at the top, I don't do anything. Just up there at the top, it says, hey, here's the next episode of Blackish. Here's the next episode of The Young Pope. Is that what you're looking for? Now, if that's not what I'm looking for, then I go, no, I'm going down to Netflix or whatever. But if I'm watching The Young Pope, I'm like, oh, well, just click and watch, right? Or if Eileen and I are sitting down to watch an episode of Blackish, it's like, oh, that's right. We don't have to actually go down to Hulu. We could just pop that thing open right there. So that part of the interface, very clever. And I've been hearing more people, this is total anecdote, but I've been hearing more people using the Apple TV just in and among my friends.
I don't have an Apple TV, so I'm going to lean on both you and Bryce on this.
Sure.
But that is the environment that only has a history for what you watch within that. It doesn't access your previous viewing history.
It's for things that you watch through the Apple TV. So I've had it not sync up HBO stuff because I will watch it on my desktop sometimes.
Right.
Same with Hulu. But once you kind of click into those those
do you
shows
feel
on Hulu,
a growing guilt for watching content outside of the environment, knowing that it's affecting your recommendation algorithm?
actually a little bit.
Yeah, right.
Just a little bit.
It's like you're watching it and you're like, it doesn't know that I'm watching it. It's gonna think that I'm not.
And that's annoying, right? Like if you watch it on your iPad, it keeps track of it, right? Like it's that Apple universe of saying, hey, as long as you stay in our universe, except for our laptop, you'll be fine. And they've even said they want to bring it to the laptop, which would close that circle unless you're using a Windows device, So it still has those problems, and it still has, like I said, that issue of like, oh, I wish all my television shows were up there. But the fact that I'm using it all shocks me.
Do you think, and this is the part where we step way out of bounds and we start to speculate wildly about stuff like what Mr. Twirdahl is bringing to Apple, what he has to offer. I would imagine, let me ask you this, the Apple TV, is it good enough that they should start hammering hard on it, that everybody needs this? By which I mean, Fire TV was not, and is not, still perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but they were right to hammer as hard as they did on it because it was good enough to get most of the experience, and most of the people who bought it liked it. And to be honest, it's only out of convenience that we've flipped back to the PlayStation 4. But is the Apple TV now at that point where it's as good as or better than the Fire TV, to where, yes, Apple should lean very, very heavily on this being the new experience for the next 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, it is very much equivalent to the Fire TV. Each one of them is stronger in a few areas than the other, but for the most part, if I wanted to, and I couldn't say this a year ago, if I wanted to, I could live in just the Apple TV universe, except for Amazon Prime. And the same thing goes, for Amazon Fire TV. I could live in the Fire TV except for Google Play, or except for being able to see iTunes stuff. Now, right now, that leans me more towards Roku or Fire TV because Amazon Prime has some really good originals that I want to see. And Apple TV really needs to fix that because Amazon Prime is a very worldwide now, highly sought after source of original programming. But Apple's also going to start offering its own original programming, as we will see later in the show. So we will start to be able to go a little tit for tat. If you can live without Amazon Prime programming on your television set-top box, then you can live entirely on the Apple TV, and it has great apps and a good interface. And I definitely prefer the interface of the same apps on Apple TV to the interface on Roku.
If I'm Apple and I am looking for reasons that I haven't done this yet, it would be missing Amazon, but also things like the YouTube app. The YouTube app is still based on the old version from the old Apple TV. So the version with the sidebar and your subscriptions and like a refresh button is not there on the Apple TV, which is crazy because that's a really big part.
Wait, the Apple TV, the YouTube app on Apple TV for me just shows all my subscriptions.
Right. It's like ported over basically from the old version of it. If you've ever used it on the PlayStation where you have the sidebar and you have all of the really nice
I see what you're saying. The
console experience, element. Whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I actually think they've improved the YouTube app on the Apple TV quite a bit, but it isn't the same. That's the problem with the YouTube app. It's not the same across platform.
Right.
So thinking about, we've talked about the various distribution platforms, and now we're talking about, various boxes, set-top boxes or whatever. And we've used phrases like ecosystems. We've talked about the brand power of one versus another. I just had a new metaphor strike me that maybe is the most appropriate. I don't think they're different countries because it's not like you can't go from one place to another. I think they're like boroughs where it's like you're in Queens. Yeah, Brooklyn's just a little bit down the way, but you're in Queens. It's you're in Manhattan.
Well, and you can get most of the same things in Queens that you can get in Brooklyn,
right? And if you really
except for
care,
that one really cool restaurant that's in Brooklyn,
exactly.
You gotta go to
if
Brooklyn
it's something
for
real
that
special, it's like I'll go to Brooklyn for it.
Yeah, but then there's that one really good restaurant that's in Queens that you can't get in Brooklyn.
Yeah, right. I mean, doesn't that seem to feel like where we're ending up between all the hardware and loose alliances that we see in some of the content?
And honestly, if I had to make a recommendation to someone on like universal set-top box coverage, I would say get an Apple TV for the best interface, and then get either a Roku stick or maybe a Fire TV stick or a Chromecast. Like, get something cheap that will allow you to do Amazon.
That'll give you a subway token, so you could go to
so you can go to that one cool Amazon Prime restaurant to watch Mozart in the Jungle when you need to.
And if you need to get to Staten Island, don't forget that the ferry won't accept Roku boxes.
Yeah, and those will also give you access to Google Play, which I think I just mentioned earlier that Google Play is not on Fire TV, but it is. I'm pretty sure it is, actually.
Right on. Well, I mean, good. Hopefully all of this boils down to a marked increase in effort for something we've been waiting for. I don't know, the history of all incarnations of this show.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we have given a marked increase in effort based on the number of you that are willing to support the show at patreon.com/Cordkillers.
Yeah, man. I'll tell you what, you guys are making the dream happen. You know what? It occurred to me. If somebody out there right now might be somebody who has never known about the previous incarnation of our show, who didn't even realize that previous to Patreon, I had to be a full-time touring magician who would just wedge this program in on the side. And then one day, you guys all showed up, 1,771 of you bosses, started kicking in about $1 an episode, and they transformed both of our lives. We were able to go completely loud, live, and independent and do it every single week. If you're somebody like that, write me a letter. Let me know what it's like. Cordkillers@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your stories of how you fell into our wonderful little clubhouse.
And thank you to every single person who supports us. If you're not one of them yet and you're willing to support us, head to patreon.com/Cordkillers. And then we'll tell you how to watch.
I didn't even realize that was a segue. Like, I was just like, you said it. I was like, am I supposed to say something? But luckily Bryce was dialed in. Boop.
Well, he's a pro. He's a total pro.
Unlike
also,
me.
if you don't support us on Patreon, we'll still tell you how to watch. Hey, HBO Now streaming service has now hit 2 million subscribers. Time Warner announced that last Wednesday. This is an official number. Last time they gave us a number was in March 2016 when they said they were approaching 1 million. So they've at least doubled that in a year. And so the eternal debate begins. The spin doctors weigh in. Is that a big number or not, Brian?
How many of you guys at home had the exact same experience as me? 2 million, that's a lot, question mark?
Yeah. Somebody on Twitter responded to this. Actually, a couple people did. Responded to this with like, yeah, so just 38 million more to go to catch Netflix. Ha, ha, ha. And it's like, well, okay. Sort of, except you're not counting all the cable subscribers, right? That's the majority of HBO's business is cable subscribers. This is just 2 million online.
That's a really good point.
Netflix only has online.
So that's a very, very good point. So do we know how many HBO subscribers are on traditional cable or have the availability of HBO Go?
I will try to find a definitive number, but it is less than 40 million. So you can still say Netflix has more subscribers than HBO.
That's fine. But understand, like, what HBO Now number represents is subscribers that flat out would not have existed if they didn't extend and diversify their brand with this alternate offering. And we've talked about it on the show before. There's a number of things they've done very, very different with HBO Now than they did with HBO Go. And they could have used, for example, not the least of which is using a different set of servers that they are paying different people to handle those streams. They're handled differently. The engines are different, which makes me really, now that I think about it, kind of curious. Like, what does that mean in terms of, like, I get the vibe that internally they're launching a brand new service as far as they're concerned. Just happens to have the same name and the same programming as the cable service / Go?
Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at it. I mean, I think HBO looks at it as a single service. It's just marketed differently. They say like, hey, it's HBO Now, but when you go to HBO Now, it really doesn't differ from HBO Go, except that we know it's a different back end, right? But otherwise, like, shows show up at the same time. It's the same selection.
But it's like it's
roughly
a
the same
substantially
interface.
that's the
What?
weird part is it's a substantially different back end. Like the engine that renders the and this might have changed since I last did it, but even the engine that renders the closed captioning on it is different from one service to another.
Yeah, it's a different piece of software.
All
Right.
of the way the servers handle
But the
everything is different
selection
from one
is
to
the
the
same.
other.
It's the same shows,
Sure.
same movies, same pitch. It's roughly, I mean, $15 a month for HBO Now is roughly what you get HBO for as an add-on in cable packages, unless there's some kind of discount
I guess
going
that's
on,
the
which does happen more often with cable.
That's the weird thing too, is HBO Go was in every way an inferior experience on the delivery end. It's like, it's not that I ran out of bandwidth because we got gigabit here. The delivery was just poor in HBO Go versus HBO Now.
Well, and that was HBO running it internally rather than handing it over to BAM Media. So that's part of that as well.
I thought BAM did HBO Now.
They do HBO Now, exactly.
Correct,
And
but
HBO
meanwhile,
Go
is still
is still provided internally.
correct. Got it.
Yeah. I'm trying to find some numbers. The one story that I remember for sure is back in 2014 when Netflix passed HBO. And this was when HBO was only cable. HBO had 29 million U.S. members, and Netflix had 33.4 million at the time. Of course, Netflix has gone up since then.
It looks like Bryce found something. What do you got there?
I've got something from this is from Motley Fool
That's worldwide.
Well, there's domestic,
and I've only been trying to
total.
compare U.S. numbers, but yeah,
Interesting.
I found that same one from last year.
Yeah.
By the way, for the audio listeners, it does show HBO globally dwarfing Netflix globally, but
And I believe this was just after Netflix had launched worldwide, so they weren't in as many markets by these numbers that you're seeing as they are now. But look, this is, we could look at these numbers closely and parse them as much as we want. Fact of the matter is, HBO Now with 2 million, doubling its number in a year, is a good thing. I mean, I think that at the end, where they are in the race with Netflix is almost hard to compare when you have to go through cable to get it for the most of the subscribers, and you can't get Netflix through cable with most of the subscribers. It's not a one-to-one comparison yet. A more important data point to me is the rate of growth, and HBO Now's rate of growth looks good.
yeah, I would say this number comprises almost entirely people who were stealing or borrowing HBO Go accounts from loved ones and relatives, people who were previously pirating HBO material, and a trifling amount of people who had HBO with a traditional service and have since cut the cord, and this is their new option to get HBO. I mean, this is a fairly remarkable number.
I would be curious to know what those breakdowns are, because I know the existence of HBO Now is constantly cited by people who are cutting the cord. People who I've talked to who are cutting the cord, if they didn't get HBO before, it doesn't matter. But if they were watching Game of Thrones before, if they were into HBO before, they generally are like, oh, well, so I can do HBO Now and Netflix. And then the decision whether to cut the cord is no longer about that. So that has taken HBO out of the equation. Like, you'll keep HBO if you're willing to pay for it. It's all about, can I get my live sports? Does the right package deliver the shows that I want to get? Is it got a cloud DVR that I can use? All of that sort of thing.
Right.
All right. We do all of these hoops so that we can watch things. So let's talk about what to watch in Under Surveillance.
It's all about location. Under surveillance.
Man, one of the things you're going to watch is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, apparently, because Brian brought this story to my attention. Hollywood Reporter saying that in its unscientific pre-screening, which is basically just recruiting people off the street, bringing in friends and family, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 scored a perfect 100, which apparently
out of
has
how many?
never happened to any Marvel movie.
Well, and keep in mind, I mean, here's the reason it's skewed. It's skewed because this is a friends and family screening, so you have a warm and primed audience. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this is very likely a audience that saw and dug Guardians of the Galaxy 1. and understand the other side is that when it says it got a perfect score of 100, it means that the average review, the average number of points out of 100 people gave was 100.
That means everybody in the audience gave it 100?
I mean, or either if you want to be generous, then I guess like you could maybe absorb 1 out of every 100 people giving it a 0 and still barely have it. But this blew away previous high scorers were The Avengers and Iron Man 3. I think it's safe to say, believe the hype at this point, right?
I don't know. Beatmaster said, do you remember Batman versus Superman getting a standing ovation from all the Warner Brothers execs?
Okay, well, I mean, because they were clapping for money. They were not clapping for the movie.
I was going to say, like, that's different than Friends and Family. Friends and Family still want it to be good, though.
Right,
So
they want it to be good because they want their family to have worked on something good, but almost certainly all of them had seen the first movie and knew whether or not this was a worthy sequel. Almost certainly they were all primed saying, please tell the truth. This number helps us to fix things that are broken. And then
anyone who's had friends or family knows they don't always say what you want them to say.
Oh, correct. Well, especially when it's vaguely anonymized and they know that they're there to perform a role as a helpful piece of the storytelling process. And instead, what everyone said was change nothing. This is exactly the movie I wanted to see.
Yeah. So expect a perfect movie is what we're saying.
Or at least a perfect sequel to Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
If your friends or family worked on it.
Now, here's the next one. A&E is developing an 8-episode series called Second Chance. It'll come out 1 episode per week. It's about emotional exes trying to figure out why their relationships fell apart. Maybe it's not the series for you, but hey, this is the kind of series that A&E does. It is going to run in the UK, Australia, Canada, and the United States. And the reason I'm bringing it up is it's going to be on Snapchat, not on A&E. Snapchat has been partnering with shows like The Voice and Planet Earth 2 to run complimentary content, but this will be the first original unscripted drama for Snapchat.
So there's a number of reasons this is a smart play to make, because it allows A&E to leverage the A&E brand in a marketplace where it has no penalty for losing. If A&E releases something and it doesn't do a lot on Snapchat, there's no stain and there's no egg on anyone's face.
Yeah, their penalty is cost. You guys spent a bunch of money on something that flopped. That's
Correct.
it.
But this is a highly connected, viral-ready platform. So if it explodes, all of a sudden, they get all the benefit. For example, when Revision 3 was bought by Discovery, there was a substantial benefit to suddenly changing the bottom header of my emails to say host of Discovery's Scam School or whatever. Although now I think we're Group 9 Productions. I don't really know anymore. But the point is, it's a smart play. It's a good speculative play. Did you get any information on the duration of the content? I assume it's short form because
I'm going to guess that it's 10 minutes. Yeah, if it's on Snapchat. I don't think they're going to put a 30-minute show up there on Snapchat, especially because you can't put Snapchat up on an Apple TV or a Fire TV, I don't think.
In a way that would be comfortable to watch a 30-minute featurette or.
Yeah, no, you're watching Snapchat on your phone, so they're not gonna make this a super long thing. The other place, and the reason I bring up the Snapchat thing is Apple dropped a trailer during the Grammys last night of James Corden's Carpool Karaoke. So this is the first trailer. This is a spin-off from James Corden's segment, Carpool Karaoke, that he's been doing in The Late Late Show, where he gets into a car with a famous celebrity and they both sing along to that celebrity's songs as well as other songs. Corden won't be in every episode. Sometimes they'll be hosted by other celebrities besides Corden. So this trailer kind of shows you who's lined up for this series. And this is a series coming to Apple Music. Now, they didn't give us a release date yet, but what's going on here is we have original shows going to no longer is it like, whoa, original shows are coming to services like Netflix and Amazon instead of cable. It's original shows are coming anywhere. Anybody who has any kind of ability to deliver video is now getting into doing original shows.
We'll talk about this a little bit more when we talk about the Netflix rundown, but we truly are entering an age where the brand of the show is a superior commodity than the brand of the network. Full stop. I mean, it used to be you would watch whatever was on Thursday night because it was between Night Court and Cheers, and yeah, we're gonna wedge Boston Common with the Seinfeld lead-in. That worked for a year and a half, but it's like that's not possible anymore. And so instead, it's very much if you've established a brand. Because think about this: this is a show that the brand of this show is built upon the brand of the individuals who went and did this, I assume, for a free appearance or for a scale pay experience on the Late Late Show, James Corden. So you have individual brands assembling the brand of a segment of a show that is a show on a network. And eventually they took the segment from the show, brought it out, put it on its own brand, and put it on some other thing. Anyway, brands. Lots of brands.
I don't know, man. I see what you're saying, and it's certainly got a lot of evidence on its side, but we definitely talk about Netflix shows.
Yes and no. I'll tell you what. We're about to talk about it, but the Bill Nye Saves the World. I think we're talking about it because it's Bill Nye, not because it's Netflix.
Well, and that may be true in that case, but we talk about Netflix shows. We talk about HBO shows. Like the move is shifting, right?
I'm gonna say,
it's not the same as what you're talking about. Like, oh, I turn on NBC on Thursday nights, but you still have a lot of people like talking about the place that they watch the show. And I think that's what Snapchat's trying to do with this A&E show. They don't care about it being A&E. They're like, oh, I watched this show on Snapchat.
I don't know. And I'm not saying I do know, but I'm saying I don't know because we're about to just rattle off a list of Netflix shows. And my prediction is in the next 3 minutes, we're going to rattle off a list and then we'll talk about the 2 or 3 that are individual brands that have. We're going to talk about more about the individual shows than we are about the Netflix part of things.
And by the way, Silicon Valley returning April 23rd. That's an HBO show. I know you don't care about that part of it, but that is an HBO.
Damn it!
I'm totally trolling for it. I'm sorry.
Cheap shot, Merritt.
Silicon Valley coming back on April 23rd, and the key thing about that is not only, hey, if you like Silicon Valley, it's coming back April 23rd, but it's probably going to premiere without Game of Thrones. Its past 2 seasons, Game of Thrones and Silicon Valley have premiered together, and this goes to Brian's notion of like, hey, back in the day, you want a nice lead-in, and Silicon Valley will give you a nice lead-in because it's Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is a shorter season. We don't have a premiere date for that exactly yet, so it is probably going to premiere a little bit later because it's not a full 10-episode season, so that'll be interesting. All right, let's get to the Netflix lineup. This is significant in one way, is that Netflix is no longer saying, hey, we have an original show. Netflix is no longer saying, hey, it's been a couple months, here's our next original show. Netflix is coming out with like, here's our next 13 original shows. Project MC2 coming February 14th. Chef's Table, new season, February 17th. Buddy Thunderstruck, March 10th. Marvel's Iron Fist. We knew this, but it's on the list, March 17th. There's also a new trailer for Iron Fist out. Love premieres March 10th. Julie's Green Room comes March 17th. I don't know. New season of Grace and Frankie, March 24th. Bill Nye Saves the World, April 21st. Girl Boss, also April 21st. Casting John Bonet, April 28th. Dear White People has a new trailer out as well, April 28th. Anne, May 12th. I think that's the Anna Green Gables one. House of Cards, new season, May 30th. And new season of Orange is the New Black on June 9th. They also announced that OA has been renewed for a second season, but they didn't give that a release date.
Dude, they're now counter-programming themselves. They're doing simultaneous releases attempting to hit 2 different markets. My guess is that the same demographic that will on April 21st watch Bill Nye Saves the World will be more likely to watch that than the demographic that's going to tune in for Girl Boss on the exact
and vice
same
versa,
day.
right?
Same thing with casting Jean Benet. What have white middle class people been obsessed with for 20 years? Meanwhile, you have Dear White People, a very countercultural.
Dear White People, stop being obsessed with Jean Benet.
Yes, exactly. This is amazing, man. Watching them reach out to multiple segments all at the same time. And again, it's by the way, can we talk a little bit about this Bill Nye show? The Bill Nye Saves the World appears to be kind of a hybrid. It looks a little bit like Star Talk on steroids, and it reminds me that of course, Bill Nye the Science Guy. A lot of kids grew up in it in the early '90s. What most people probably don't remember is that Bill Nye had a show called The Eyes of Nye on PBS in the early 2000s, and it did not last more than a season, although it was very good. He talked about a lot of the exact same stuff he's talking about right here, busting on alternative medicine, talking about why you shouldn't be afraid of GMOs and so on. But the most important thing I perceive is that his demographic hadn't aged to the point that they wanted to see him on that new platform. He was suddenly starting all over with an older demographic on PBS. Whereas with Netflix, he's able to immediately appeal to that younger demographic who's now in Netflix buying age. And quick side note, a friend of the Weird Things podcast, Emily Calandrelli, is one of the regular guests on here. She was nice enough. Remember, she was on the SpaceX launch and showed up on the live stream. MCal Space Gal, she went by on Twitter for a while.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm very, very excited about this.
Yeah, that looks great. And you should be excited. And I imagine the people who are into Girl Boss might also be excited. I have no idea. I'm just overwhelmed. Like, I started to feel bad a year or so ago when it's like, there's a new Netflix show and we didn't, I haven't been watching it, right? As if we could watch all the shows. I think it's insane to see this strategy come to fruition, where like you very rightly pointed out, Netflix is like, we don't care if you watch all our shows. I mean, that is the first time a network has ever said that. Every network, including HBO, would like you to watch all their shows. They don't expect you to. They understand you're not going to, but their ideal would be that you would. Like, we have all the kinds of shows you watch. Netflix very, very clearly is like, oh no, we don't expect you to watch everything.
Netflix.
We are making shows to keep you interested, and we are making shows to keep people entirely unlike you interested, and you're not going to watch those shows.
Netflix is in the rare position where they can do that doublespeak thing of saying, no, our shows aren't for everyone, but they are for you. And you're like,
Yes.
You're right, Netflix. You're a Rorschach onto which I can project my own personality. And speaking of which, somehow Netflix reached into my heart with the weirdest, most insane special ever.
Don't tip it.
Did you see this? Just throw it in.
So this is going to be the on the lookout for today.
Oh,
but
shoot. I'm sorry. I jumped ahead. All right. We're going to go to On the Lookout. I'm so glad that Bryce picked this up.
Stick around. Don't stop listening to the podcast. We'll get to that in just a minute. I thought you were going to go to Castlevania Season 1, Part 1, which is coming to Netflix in 2017. They haven't given that a release date, but probably Frederator Networks and Adi Shankar are involved. In fact, Shankar said he was doing a Castlevania series on Facebook about a year ago. He said on Facebook he was doing the series. He didn't say where he was doing it, but the fact that Netflix is announcing a Castlevania series, it has to be him, right?
Dude, by the way, if you're not hip, if you don't remember the name Adi Shankar, you should. Do me a favor, Bryce. See if you could pull up on YouTube. Adi Shankar has brought a bunch of what he calls the bootleg universe. He does these unlicensed, not for pay. You'll notice they're not commercialized because they use properties and characters he doesn't own. It began when he did a Punisher segment featuring the guy who played the Punisher, and it was better than it was called Dirty Laundry in the beginning. And it was amazing because you saw the Punisher acting the way the actual character the Punisher would act instead of the version that we got on television. He also did an amazing bootleg version of the story of the origin of Venom in the style of a French faux documentary called Dog Bites Man. And it's brilliant. It was all just right on the nose. He also did a dark, gritty kind of reboot thing, reimagining of the Power Rangers. It's across the board, man. Watch all of his shorts. They're really, really good. And once you see it, you're going to be really, really excited for a Castlevania TV show.
All right, let's talk about what we're watching. Brian, starting with you, what's been on your screen? What's been going in your eyeballs?
Hey, man, I got a surprise blast from the past. I talked about this on the Weird Things podcast. Turns out there's a movie that came out a few years ago that has been the subject of a lot of easy, cheap pops and jokes, but I went back and watched it again through the eyes of my 12-year-old and 9-year-old daughter, and hot damn, does it stand up? Is it good storytelling? If you're too young to know that there's hack writing in it, if you're too young to know that it's just literally the plot of Ferngully, then James Cameron's Avatar is, damn, does it hold up. It's nearly 10 years old. The animation is still the standard, best in the biz. Like, there's entire scenes because people aren't speaking the same language where the only communication is in significant eye glances between weird blue cat people that have never met each other, and it translates, and you feel it, and you buy into it. It's worth a revisit, especially since we got a billion sequels coming up in like 20 minutes.
Well, yeah, and there's also an amusement park being developed for it out in Disney World, I believe. So yeah, this is going to continue to be a big franchise. And I'll be honest, every time somebody criticized Avatar after it came out, I said, "Oh yeah, no, it's a poor man's Dances with Wolves. I get it. It's also ripping off Fern Gully. I get it. No, you're absolutely right. But I always enjoyed watching it. It would come on. This is back in the days when I would still just turn on the TV and see what was on. It would come on TV. And I would just be sucked in. I'd be like, it's just so pretty, though. It's just so gorgeous. And I haven't looked at it in a few years. It's interesting to see that it still holds up.
And I tell you what, man, there's a lot of places you could fault it, but you cannot fault it on its economy of storytelling. Its first act is perfect. Oh, guy lost his brother and has no legs. Oh, I hope something good. Oh, he got legs. Also, he's a blue cat person. Oh, look at this world. And of course, James Cameron is an insane person. So every single aspect of the movie or the world is thought out, but not only does he take the tedious time to explain it all to you, but he does each one in an entertaining, 3 to 5 second vignette that makes you glad to see the story progressing. It's really a masterclass in telling a very simple story very, very well. On top of that, still watching Voltron with Penny. We're pacing them out because they're so good. And I spent all day yesterday playing Hearthstone and watching 5 episodes of the A&E Scientology show, the one Scientology: The Aftermath, which is about Leah Remini, the chick from the fine lady, talented actress from The King of Queens, and her fallout. And I'm 5 episodes in, and to my shock and surprise, I realized they have done a very effective job of condemning the Church of Scientology, each episode from a totally different angle. This one's about the money. This one's about the way they cut you off from your family. This one's about that. I'm 5 episodes in. They still not even once have talked about some of the nutty beliefs of the Scientologists. And I suspect that I'm going to watch the rest of it and they'll never get around to talking about the crazy things that are in Scientology, which is so admirable, because that's not, their crime's not having nutty beliefs. Anyone can have nutty beliefs. Their crime is the literal crimes they've committed. Like that's...
No, and that actually is more creditable, because maybe you think the beliefs don't sound that nutty, right? That's fine. We all have our own beliefs. But if you don't think stealing is a cool thing, then you're probably more in line with the rest of us, and that's something we can all agree on. And if you can show that, I'm not accusing them of it, but it sounds like this documentary is making a case that these sorts of things, if not actual crimes, certainly ethical violations are happening. That's pretty amazing self-control when we all know the kinds of things they could be tearing into.
Sure. They avoid the cheap pops. Now keep in mind, it's very beautifully shot, but it also very much is still a reality program, which means there's a few reality tropes that you see where it's like you could tell they're really hoping somebody's going to cry at this moment, and sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. And everybody does that reality show television thing of like speaking in the current present tense of like, I'm sitting here thinking this, and he's punching me over and over again. But looking beyond that, if you just accept that's the way reality television works, it's really good storytelling.
Anything else before we move on?
Man, not that matters. I've just hogged everything. The Expanse, Justified, and I watched Split, which I'm not going to talk about because you, Pinky, promised you're going to watch Split, and we're going to talk about it next week, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm definitely going to watch it. I'm really going to try to watch it before next week.
Okay.
Here's the problem. When your wife gets a new job that involves having to see movies because she works for Fandango and Rotten Tomatoes, you end up seeing a lot of the movies that she needs to see. And if she doesn't want to see Split, it's really harder to find that extra time to work in Split. But it did mean that I got to go see a preview version of Get Out, which is the Jordan Peele directed horror movie.
Yeah. This is the one about the African American in a white community that feels sketchier and sketchier, right?
Yeah, so don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil the fun of watching it. But if you've watched the trailers, you know that it's about a white girl and a black guy who are dating, and she takes him home to her family for the first time. And first scene in the movie is him getting out of her like, did you tell them I'm black? And she's like, it won't matter. And of course, it does.
Of course, it's a
there's
movie.
There's all kinds of other things going on there. And it's just, oh my God. It really is. It's like Cabin in the Woods in that it nails every single horror movie trope, but does it in a fun way that doesn't make you roll your eyes. It makes you go, oh no, this is someone who really loves the genre, including an excellent, you shouldn't have, I told you not to go in there kind of moment. And at the same time, manages to be a not heavy-handed commentary on the liberal perceptions of race and the problems that the black community will have sometimes in society, all rolled into, I don't want to say a fun horror movie because it's Jordan Peele and a lot of people are going to assume it's comedy, and it's not, but it's a fun ride in the sense of just you kind of know where it's going, but you're really enjoying getting there anyway.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Also watched Legion because there were legion of you out there saying we needed to watch Legion. It's certainly experimental. It's definitely a different take on superhero TV shows than Marvel is doing on Netflix or DC is doing on the CW. I liked it a lot. It's really like experimental, and I think if you really like it, you should keep watching it. And I probably will keep watching it too, but it's not going to be for everyone. That's the thing.
Man, what a ringing endorsement. You sound really excited about that show.
Yeah. I mean, there are parts of it that I am very excited about, but it's a bit like Preacher, actually.
You know what's funny is as you described it, I'm like, sounds like Preacher. And I definitely fell in love with, I fell in like with Preacher on the first episode. By the end of the first season, I mean, as we talked about in our year-end roundup, I mean, I think it might be the best show.
Also watched John Wick because my wife said we need to see this because I need to see John Wick Chapter 2 in the theater. So we haven't done that yet, but I actually really I enjoyed it a lot more than I expected to.
Was it about a dog as well?
It starts with a dog.
Okay.
I mean, do you want me to tell you? Is that too spoilery?
All I know is that the first movie is somebody kills his dog and he goes nuts and kills everyone. I'm wondering
and
if
that's oversimplifying. There's more to why he's upset about the dog than just like, hey, you shot my dog. We also watched The Lobster, which is a stars Colin Farrell, about a dystopian society where if you're single, you have to go to a hotel and you get a certain amount of time to find a new mate, or you're turned into an animal of your choice.
I've heard really good things about that.
Here's the thing.
About that societal practice or the movie?
Yeah, no, the idea of
Okay.
it.
Neither Eileen and I enjoyed watching it.
Aww.
But the longer I go after having watched it, the more I enjoy it. The more I think back about, oh, that was actually really good. Oh, that was really clever. I really like that part. But it was one of those things like maybe it was just the mood we were in that night or whatever. But it was like, oh man, this is I don't know. I don't know if I'm liking this. So again, that's one that might not be for everyone, but if it is for you, I think it's really good. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. By the way, don't try to if just plan on seeing Split without Eileen. Don't try to convince her. Don't.
Oh no, I've given up
go.
trying to convince. Now I'm just trying to find the 4 hours it takes me to like get to the theater, find a parking spot, watch the movie, and get home.
Yeah.
I can do it. I know I can. Bryce, what have you been on the lookout for?
So Brian, did you watch this?
I watched that trailer. Watch that trailer. It's so good. So good.
The trailer's good. The movie's even better. Okay, so this is Michael Bolton's Big Sexy Valentine's Day special. It is an hour-long special on Netflix starring Michael Bolton, singer extraordinaire.
Playing himself.
I don't even want to give the conceit of why there's a reason he has to put on a Valentine's Day special.
Okay, so the trailer starts off looking like, oh, this is an over-the-top, most Michael Bolton special of all time. Everything's
Sure.
uber
There's
cheesy.
cake,
Oh,
there's
look at him.
photos.
He's owning the cheesiness or whatever.
Yeah.
And then halfway through the special, like, crap gets kicked into 12th gear.
So I will say that's the weird thing about this trailer is that the trailer is like, yeah, there's a big turn in this promotional material, but I think the special itself is more consistent and more solidly wacky the whole way through from the very beginning. I won't tell you the conceit of why this special is happening because
By the way, if you're watching the visuals right now, about 2/3 in, you see Michael Bolton suddenly pull out a pistol and cock it, and now you're watching a hardcore action. You're watching transformation segments, and you see Lonely Island, Comedy Bang Bang. Get ready for him to fly on a giant eagle, and it's amazing.
What you're not hearing is Michael Bolton doing a rendition of the Pirates of the Caribbean theme song. What's really great? So this like Brian said, this is by the Lonely Island and Comedy Bang Bang. So it is written and directed by Scott Aukerman and the guy whose name starts with A in the Lonely Island, whose name I cannot
Andy
remember.
Samberg.
The other one, Akiva.
Oh.
Akiva.
But Andy Samberg plays Kenny G.
Also, Andy Samberg plays Kenny G. You'll be surprised who Kenny G plays.
Oh my God! Wow, what an unexpected twist!
No,
Akiva Schaffer?
Yeah, no. So like, if you got an hour, it's really good. If you've seen the Comedy Bang Bang TV show, it's kind of similar to that, where it's a lot of studio stuff, but it's very wacky and concepts that are pushed very high. There are a lot of celebrity comedians. There's Sarah Silverman. There's Fred Armisen.
Maya
Rudolph is in it. It's really, really good. And what I loved is that they launched it last week ahead of Valentine's Day because they were having a very serious Valentine's Day movie coming out on Valentine's Day.
Oh, that's funny.
So check it out. That's Michael Bolton's big, sexy Valentine's Day special. It's very funny. You might not get in the mood, but it's very funny.
Oh, I'm so excited.
If you got something we should be on the lookout for, email us, folks, cordkillers@gmail.com. All right, before we get to the rest of the cord-cutting news of the week, Brian, what's been going on in your world?
Hey, man, we've had a really exciting project fall into our laps, which means we've had to divert some of the time and energy we put into the Friday giveaway videos on Scam School, and instead, we are now doing those as giveaways on the Modern Rogue. So here's the thing. A lot of people are not dialed in on this. You don't live in YouTube, so it doesn't matter to you. When you subscribe on YouTube to anything, that doesn't necessarily mean it will ever show you another video from that channel. It means you have indicated that I care enough to press the subscribe button, and secretly the algorithm will show you things and then not show you them based on how you react and stuff. If you want to see those episodes and know when new episodes come out, do us a favor, do as they say, ring the bell. Yeah, there's
Did they say that? Is that the thing?
That's the thing. You ring the bell.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
There's a next to the subscribe button, you click subscribe. And then there'll be a little bell next to subscribe. Click that too, and it'll say, "Hey, how do you want to get your notifications?" It'll pop you a text message or a whatever. Here we go. As a matter of fact, we're going to live subscribe to Scam School here.
So you click the subscribe button.
That's
and
right.
then
And
there's
now
a
you're going
little
to
alarm.
ring the bell.
Send me all
sends
notifications.
notifications.
So enjoy
and then
getting
that's
those
it.
notifications.
You get push notifications. The reason that's important is because nowadays they have tools like sticky posts that you could do at the top of the comments. And so what we've started doing is we've done encrypted challenges only for 12 to 24 hours after a new episode drops of The Modern Rogue. And yes, this is a naked attempt to get you to watch in that early time because that definitely matters for the algorithm. And we all want to please the algorithm because when the algorithm smiles upon you, you get lots of views. Anyway, it's great.
You can do that to Cordkillers YouTube channel too, but that's
Yeah. Or join
Really
us
do it.
live.
do it to the Scam School first.
Yeah,
Just saying.
yeah, no, not
Back us on
Modern
Patreon.
Rogue,
Ring the
Modern
bell
Rogue.
on Scam School.
Modern Rogue.
Hey, there's
Modern
plenty
Rogue.
of bells to go around.
Ring all the bells. Time for Frontlines. Modern Rogue.
Frontlines!
Vizio has agreed to settle a lawsuit with the U.S. Federal Trade Commission and the state of New Jersey for $2.2 million because starting back in 2014, Vizio began tracking what shows were watched alongside IP addresses, MAC addresses, nearby Wi-Fi networks, and then handed that over to a third party that would match that data with anonymized sex, age, income level, and more to sell better advertising. That could then be displayed on Vizio. Vizio agreed to delete all its collected data, stop the tracking, and seek express permission before collecting and sharing any new information. This isn't really any different than what any website can collect on you. The biggest problem was that Vizio, A, wasn't telling you it was collecting it, and a lot of people don't expect their TV to collect that kind of information, and B, when they did ask you to turn it on or you found the setting, it said, we're just collecting information to provide better show recommendations. But they have not been providing any show recommendations.
Right. So their real sin was not correctly framing what they had done.
They didn't tell you what they were collecting specifically, which that's what the FTC is like. It's fine you collect this. You have to get people to agree to it, and you have to tell them what they're collecting.
Meanwhile, Facebook has hired former Mina Lefevre to be
former MTV exec.
There you go. Former
what those
MTV
words
exec
that should be in there are.
There you go. Mina Lefevre to be head of development for video content for Facebook. The former executive vice president of development and head of scripted programming at MTV. Lefevre oversaw shows like Teen Wolf and the Shannara Chronicles.
Shannara, but yes.
Shannara. Maybe you should have read this one.
Sorry.
I thought you were just switching it. Facebook recently indicated it wishes to develop original short-form programming. She joins co-founder of College Humor, Ricky Van Veen, who's now
Huner.
Facebook's... What?
I wrote Huner.
Oh, okay.
There is a
All right, now you're calling out your own typos at this point. This is no longer on me being unprofessional.
No, it's not.
Is now Facebook's head of global creative strategy. Look, man, it's a nutty world we live in, right? The takeaway is...
Are making a hash of that read aside, pretty crazy that Facebook is hiring essentially the same person that YouTube hired. YouTube hired Suzanne Daniels. She had been at the CW overseeing things like Buffy, et cetera, et cetera. Facebook just hired Mina Lefevre. She's been at MTV overseeing similarly targeted programming like Teen Wolf and Shannara Chronicles. So, you know, Suzanne Daniels from a slightly earlier era, but for Facebook, who really is trying to go head to head with YouTube on short form video, having creators do original shows on their platform, and now possibly developing their own original programming.
Yeah, I'm not going to say they can't, but man, are they hammering hard on that. They are chasing that white rabbit real hard.
Yeah, and maybe Mina Lefevre can help them catch it. Meanwhile, Viacom says it will prioritize BET, Comedy Central, MTV, now without Mina Lefevre, Nickelodeon, and Nick Jr., along with its Paramount Movie Studio, and other brands that it owns will be reorganized to support those brands. For instance, Spike is going to be renamed the Paramount Network this year to aim it towards supporting Paramount Studios. Nickelodeon and Paramount are going to co-brand 4 films this year, and this is the first major move by new Chief Executive Officer Bob Bakish, who took over as permanent CEO in in December.
On the one hand, this makes sense. When you are encountering an increasingly diffuse atmosphere, it makes sense to, during the chaos, especially if you're not having the returns that you want, to consolidate to your base, right? It's like, let's rally the troops, circle the wagons. This is who we are. We are these 5 brands. On the flip side, I mean, it's pretty clear all of this is because they lost that lawsuit to Google, right? Big old mean Google stole all their viewers.
Know. I mean, my wife no longer works for them, so I don't have a dog in that hunt. But I don't think that's what it is. It more has to do with the fact that Viacom has been struggling, and the plan had been for their common owner, National Amusements, to combine CBS and Viacom back together. If you remember, National Amusements split them up a while ago. And the idea was like, well, let's bring them back together. And CBS has been doing very well under its CEO, Les Moonves. So let's let Les run everything. That fell apart for a million different reasons. And so now Viacom has to go it alone. And they're looking at the parts of the business that are succeeding and saying, hey, we should really just focus on those parts of our business that succeed. And then everything else should feed into that.
Meanwhile, the European Union agreed on Tuesday for rules allowing subscribers of online services to access those services while traveling outside their home country within the EU. The rules apply to video streaming services, online TV services, music streaming services, and online video game marketplaces. On the one hand, this is a super sensible thing to do. I mean, obviously, if you live in Maryland and you want to go to Nevada, you shouldn't have to suddenly use Nevada type of Netflix. On the other hand, this is a weird thing for countries to be in the business of saying what kind of internet programs you can see from where.
Well, I mean, there's so many things that are different about the way Europe governs broadcasting and media and all of that. So it can get pretty tangled if we really want to get to the bottom of it. But what the European Union is trying to do is say, hey, we need to encourage one single market for digital in our member countries. And so they're doing things like getting rid of roaming fees so that if you go from Germany to France, suddenly your bill doesn't skyrocket because you crossed a border. And a lot of that just makes sense. And what they're doing here is interesting because I still don't get access. I don't think I'm guaranteed access to the French catalog if I'm German and traveling in France. And so that could cause a technical burden, I suppose. Or they could just say, fine, you're a Netflix subscriber, you get access to the Netflix in France. But that changes the economics of these kind of arrangements where Netflix says, hey, we want access to this movie. We know you've already sold the rights to someone else in these 17 markets, but you haven't sold it to anyone in France yet, and we want to get it there. And they say, great, as long as only people in France can see it, that's fine. So it muddies the waters a little bit. But eventually what it may do is force movie studios and television licensing to become Europe-based rather than be divided up into all these individual countries. And that actually could end up being good for everybody.
Yes. And that's what I think ultimately the big effect will be, is that it will no longer be worth it for individual content providers to carve up Europe into itty bitty chunks. They're like, you know what, we're just going to have to somehow make it comply with this anyway down the way.
Netflix has posted a job listing seeking someone to oversee licensing shows for books, comics, and toys, and creating partnerships with retailers. Bloomberg also said Netflix is starting to ask for a cut of merchandise made for shows released by Netflix but produced by outside studios. So two different things going on. If Netflix owns the whole thing, they want to start putting out toys and ancillary products. If Netflix is licensing it, say like House of Cards, they want a cut of any merchandise that the producer actually makes. Netflix already experimented with this. They were selling some Stranger Things merchandise in Hot Topic stores.
So on the surface, you immediately think of all the shows that you and I watch on Netflix. None of that is the target. If I'm going to read the tea leaves on this, this is them expressing a deep commitment to children's programming. I will bet that the kids' viewership and their original properties that they are coming out with. I've got a 4-year-old who lives on Netflix. Like the iPad is the Netflix window for her, and that's that. And so meanwhile, realize also Cars is the most profitable line in all of Disney, purely based on merchandising. They sell more Cars crap than the movie. Like the movies could be a loss leader and lose them money, and they would make it all back in the merchandising. Netflix is if you want to read the tea leaves, Netflix is committed to children's programming.
You may be right about that. Disney certainly is the model that Netflix is looking at here. I don't know if it changes their commitment to kids programming personally. I think it's just them looking and saying, hey, we've got some really successful kids programming and we've got some really successful Marvel programming. And you know what Disney sells a lot of? Toys related to their kids programming and their Marvel programming and their Star Wars programming. And so we shouldn't lose out on any merchandising opportunity we have for the properties we own.
Yep. Lastly, the Media Rating Council has given accreditation to Nielsen's digital and TV ratings tool, which is part of its total audience measurement initiative. The tool allows digital viewership to be combined with traditional TV ratings. Right on time, Tom, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, this is a little esoteric, but essentially what this means is if you're a PlayStation Vue or Sling TV or DirecTV Now viewer, your eyeball doesn't count in Nielsen ratings unless it's part of this total audience measurement initiative. So when you see those overnight ratings in the news, those don't include you. They can't. They can only include traditional broadcast cable and satellite. This is Nielsen's slow march to saying, we just want to count everyone's eyeballs no matter what service they're using. And this is another step along the way.
Yep.
All right, let's get to the dispatches. They're from the front.
Oh, you don't say.
Finn wrote in and said, I have Time Warner Cable, now called Spectrum in New York City. It's called Spectrum all over the United States now. He said, I tried to stop my cable, but because I have internet and TV bundled, they told me if I got rid of TV, the price would go up. Crazy.
Hey, speaking of which, in a related note, remember how I told you I was getting DirecTV because that would give me unlimited data?
Your sweet unlimited everywhere, everything unlimited.
Yeah,
stuff.
the one
you just
that
had to hold the satellite dish.
Where like 3 times I said, "Hey, so this is unrestricted. There's no throttling or anything," and they said yes to all of that. Guess who got a phone call from the install guy saying, "Hey, I know what neighborhood you live in." Because I'm supposed to come out to your neighborhood, you have fiber optic cable. And then I checked, and you're a fiber optic subscriber. You have gigabit. It would be completely insane for us to install a dish out there. I'm like, yeah, I know. That's what I thought too. Yeah. Also, somebody pointed out that, despite me asking 5 times, the ad clearly in the fine print says after 22 gigabytes, they may choose to throttle you at any time to any level they feel like. He says, yeah, no. And he was like, well, why are we here? And I'm like, oh, because the person very clearly had gotten the message that they needed to drive everyone to DirecTV, and they said just keep it in the closet. And he's like, well, that's dumb and won't even give you what I want. I'm like, yeah. And he says, well, let me see how much it would be. And he click, let me talk to my sales guy. He's like, well, we can give you cable for $50 more a month. And I was like, but I don't want cable. That's not why I did this to begin with. And he was just like, yeah, about that. And so I was just like, okay, well, it seems like, whether or not I get cable is a discussion to have with the family, but it sounds like we both agree that this is dumb and you shouldn't come here to give me anything to put in a closet. And he goes, yeah, no, that's right. So now I don't know what I'm going to do. There's a number of issues with my current relationship with AT&T. I'm fairly unhappy. And if you work at AT&T, you could probably get me back in your good graces, but not
Here's
the way
what
you're doing
I
it
think
now.
happened. I mean, first of all, they stretched the truth, but they didn't lie. AT&T's doesn't throttle. What they do is if you hit 22 gigabytes in a month, they put you at the back of the queue if there's congestion. So it's not as bad as it used to be where it's like, oh, you hit 22 gigs, you're down to 3G speeds, right? You'll still most of the time get full speed. It just, if you're in an area that's congested, you might see a slowdown.
Right.
And so they didn't explain that part. The other thing that sounds like it happened is there's the salesperson who's like, I get a commission if I sign someone up to DirecTV. So I'm going to tell this Brian Brushwood guy anything he needs to hear to get him signed up to DirecTV.
Yep.
And then there's the guys who are like, yeah, but our P&L gets hit with charge for our service call if we have to roll a guy out there. And if he's just going to hand over equipment and not do anything, we don't want to spend that money on the service call.
Yeah. No, it's dumb. It's real dumb.
It sounds like they got you both ways, because what if at the end, like, I don't know, what if Brian Brushwood forgets to unsubscribe to this thing and he has to turn in a satellite dish?
First of all, that doesn't sound like Brian at all. I'm sure the Brian that we all know and love is on top of things at all times.
Hey, Verizon announced unlimited today.
Oh, really? They were the last holdouts.
Yeah. And you don't, there's no, like, you don't have to sign up for anything. You just get unlimited for $65 a month for the data and then $20 for the line. So like $85 a month. And it's 26 gigabytes before you hit the deprioritization thing. And it's the same thing where it's like, you might still get full speed, but if you're in a congested area, you might get put to the back of the queue.
Interesting.
Yeah. Shall we go to Brian? This guy Brian wrote in. Was it you?
No, this is at Brimerica. He writes in, one of your mini bosses asking if you've ever heard or seen this streaming TV guide for the top 3 streaming services out there. It's streamingtvguides.com, and it gives you what's currently on in your traditional grid format that you grew up on. Take a look at this. I actually poked around. First of all, the first thing you get is a giant disclaimer saying, hey, we're not affiliated with anything. We're not selling nothing. let's deal with it. And then you
Don't come at us, Dish, AT&T, and/or Sony.
Yeah, but here's the problem: is it also doesn't work. Type in The Expanse. Hey, The Expanse is a show that I want to know when it's on.
Sure, so we've typed
Says,
in-
never heard of it.
No.
Oh, wait, are you on
programs.
Sling or PlayStation?
It searches all of them. That's the whole thing.
Well, no, you have to choose the lineup, though. I noticed that.
Okay.
Right now, you're only showing, I think, the Sling stuff.
So go to lineups
So-
above it. Up. There you go.
Okay. Orange and blue.
Now choose PlayStation. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Let's do PlayStation View course.
Yeah, do Elite or Core is probably fine. Now choose The Expanse.
The Expanse and 3 programs found.
I'm against
Sci-fi.
it. I don't like it.
That's confusing, though.
I don't
It's
like it.
very confusing.
It's very
'cause that
cable-y.
search box should just search. all
Or
of the
it
things.
should at least be like, hey, what's your lineup first?
Okay, my guess is that there's you know what? Don't take my dumb word for it. I'm too dumb to. You guys
I mean,
figured
we
it
did
out
just prove
faster
we
than
were
I
wrong.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah. But check it out for yourself. But it feels very cable-y.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what Brian was saying is, if you miss the old grid, here's the old grid. Usually what I do when I need to know this kind of information is I just pull the mobile version of the app out. And there's mobile versions of Sling TV, PlayStation View, and DirecTV Now. And then I just look at the guide on the mobile app to see when stuff is on.
Yeah, I
But
guess
this is nicely done.
It's crazy how much this looks exactly like the newspaper listing that you will
Yeah.
get.
Yeah.
No, I think that's what they're going for.
Yeah.
So if you're like, hey, I think that's more usable, then go check it out, streamingtvguides.com. Mike Hogan wrote in and said on the last show, Brian talked about sci-fi streaming issues with The Expanse restarting and other crazy stuff. I ran into this a while back when running an ad blocker. It would let me get to the first commercial break, but then freaked out and restarted. Just in case no one has mentioned it already, you might try disabling the ad blocker. Mine was uBlock Origin, and it might play fine.
Yep. Meanwhile, or you could just cancel everything and just buy the stuff you want. So great, Tom. It's so great. Like when we do spoiler in time, I'm just going to load up the episode from Amazon. And I'm just going to scrub back and forth, and it'll be easy for me to remember everything and what order.
If you don't need to watch it the day it comes out,
It's the best.
It's so good.
It's the
It really
best
is.
experience.
Because then and with iTunes, I don't know if Amazon does this, but I know with iTunes they give you like little extra like behind the show stuff.
Yep.
Throw
As a
in
matter of
there
fact,
as well.
every time you pause it, every time you move the cursor over it, it tells you who's on screen, what else they did. It gives you trivia and stuff. So great. Just buy everything.
Buy it all. Hey, Tom, thought you'd be interested in how they cast the actress for Bobby Draper. They were worried about finding an actress who was 6 foot, Polynesian, and physically muscular. And there's a great IndieWire story about the search they did where they found someone who was of Polynesian descent from New Zealand, was 6 foot tall, and was willing to do the work to get as muscular as Bobby Draper should be. Just as a side note, being 6'5" and 270, she is pretty much my perfect match, says the person who wrote this email.
That is awesome. Meanwhile, Richard weighed in on the idea that $4 a month is too expensive for CISO. He says, I have to agree this is too expensive as compared to what you get from Hulu or Netflix. If you're trying to put content out there, those are the price comparisons that people are going to make. Hulu at $8 a month includes nearly all current NBC, ABC, Fox, secondary channel content, plus some back catalogs, some originals, and a growing catalog of good movies. Netflix at $8 or $10 for HD gives you a huge back catalog of shows, huge library of originals, and a good collection of movies. So how can you justify $4 a month for one genre of content from NBC? Or just $6 for CBS? Comparatively, their offerings are too limited to warrant that price. That's fair enough.
Yeah, and John said a similar thing about CBS All Access in a separate email. I would say that what these companies are trying to do is tell you we have as many programs as these others. Maybe they're coming from one source, but CISO is like, yeah, but you get the entire back catalog of all these amazing comedies. CBS All Access has like everything from the 80s, whether it was on CBS or not. CBS produced a lot of hit shows, Magnum PI, all the Star Treks, Hawaii Five-0, MacGyver. So I think what's going on is not just the size of the selection, because in some ways CISO and CBS All Access have more available than Netflix does, but the desire for that is not there.
You know what it is it's experiential. Like, for example, Netflix and Hulu can offer plenty of stuff if you just want to watch stuff. Only CBS can say, hey, Would you like to take a trip for the next month and watch every single Magnum PI episode? Just give me $4 or whatever it is they're asking for.
$6.
$6, yeah.
And we'll give you the brand new The Good Fight on top of it.
But we know you don't care about that. You care about Magnum PI and that sweet
No, of
stash. He tread water for a long time that one episode.
Just work the lock. Don't look at the dog. It's one of my favorite Magnum PI quotes. All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Our website is cordkillers.com. Our email address is cordkillers@gmail.com. We're live on diamondclub.tv Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific.
Woo!
We will cut your cords next week.
Hey, guys. Tom and Brian here. We just wanted to say thank you to all of our $5 patrons who keep us loud, live, and independent. You guys make Cordkillers the production that it is.
Your name appears in the video credits and appears in our hearts. And if you'd like to become one of them or see who they are, you can go to patreon.com/cordkillers.
You'll need to do more than just go there, though. You'll have to sign up and, pledge an amount. But
Unless you just want to see who they are.
Well, I mean, you could gawk. That's a little creepy, isn't it?
If you want to be a gawker,
Let's go.
it's up to you.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.